A single photograph sat in an ornate silver frame atop a marble mantelpiece in a grand living room, its glass slightly clouded with time. In that image, two young lovers stood arm in arm on a windswept pier at sunset. Her laugh caught mid-escape, his eyes bright with promise. It was their first photo, taken the day they met by chance at a photography exhibit, forever frozen at the very moment their worlds collided. Now, years later, Amelia Whitaker returned to her childhood home after her father's funeral, drawn back by a strange, unshakable pull. The house felt too large, its echoes too loud. Rooms she once knew intimately now felt foreign. As she ascended the wide staircase, her heart thudded with memories she thought she'd buried, memories of someone she'd left behind. In the parlor, the mantelpiece caught her eye. Brushing past her grandmother's faded tapestries and along the gleaming mahogany sideboard, she paused. The photograph, so familiar yet distant, stared back at her, reminding her of unspoken promises, untold truths, and the shattered fragments of a love she'd never fully understood. Why had her father kept this memento? And what did it mean that, of all things in this silent house, it was the one thing that still spoke directly to her heart's hidden ache? The front door clicked behind her, and Amelia Whitaker found herself swallowed by silence. Dust motes danced in the late afternoon light streaming through the stained glass windows. Her fingertips lingered on the carved banister, and she braced herself as she crossed the foyer, each footstep echoing off the high ceiling. Memories surged, unbidden and raw. Her father's booming laugh, her mother's soft humming in the kitchen, the way sunlight spilled across the Persian rug on lazy Sunday mornings. In the parlor, Amelia paused again, her gaze drifting from the mantelpiece photograph to the grand piano in the corner. She remembered the afternoon she'd first sat beside her mother at that keyboard, tentative fingers stumbling over scales. A memory too sweet, too painful. She swallowed hard, forcing her shoulders not to tremble. A sharp creak drew her attention. The door to her father's study stood half ajar. Inside, stacks of papers lay half scattered across his walnut desk, as though he'd stormed out mid-thought. On the wall above the desk, a portrait of her mother in youth hung crookedly. Underneath it, a plaque read simply, "For the love that shapes us all." Amelia's chest tightened. She crossed to the desk and lifted a sheet of yellowed letterhead. It bore her father's elegant scrawl. "My dearest Amelia, if you read this, it means I can no longer speak these words in person. I have left something for you, something that answers more questions than I ever dared ask. Trust in what you'll find." Her breath caught in her throat. Questions, so many unanswered questions, flooded back. Why had she left this house 5 years ago without warning? Why had her parents never spoken of her engagement? Of her fiancé, Lucas? Of the photograph he'd given her, the one he'd snapped the day they met? As she folded the letter, a distant thunder rumbled beyond the stained glass. Rain began tapping softly at the window panes. A sudden disturbance at the study door made her whirl around. Across the hall, the library door swung open. A tall figure filled the threshold, Madeline Thornton, her father's attorney and longtime family friend. Madeline's dark hair was pulled into a severe bun. Her expression was taut, unreadable. "Amelia," Madeline said, her voice low and formal. "I apologize for barging in. The will has been read, but there's more your father wished you to have." She lifted a small wooden box, its surface intricately carved with the same vine motif as the picture frame on the mantel. Amelia's heart pounded. "What is it?" she whispered. Madeline set the box on the desk. "Open it." With trembling fingers, Amelia lifted the lid. Inside lay a single snapshot, edges frayed, the glossy surface dulled with age. Her breath hitched as she recognized the scene. Herself and Lucas on that pier, framed by the setting sun. But there was something different. In the background, barely visible, stood a younger man, dark-haired, grim-faced, someone Amelia didn't remember ever being there. "Who is he?" Amelia's voice broke. Madeline's eyes flicked away. "Your father called him Nathaniel. He said you'd understand one day." Nathaniel. The name felt foreign and weighty. Amelia lifted the photo to the light. Nathaniel's posture was stiff, distant, his gaze fixed on the camera in an intensity that felt accusatory. It wasn't the carefree snapshot she'd kept in her wallet for years. This was something else, something her father had hidden. Why didn't he tell me about this? Amelia whispered, pressing the photograph to her chest. Madeline hesitated. Your father thought he was protecting you. He believed the truth might. She swallowed. Harm you more than help. Amelia inhaled sharply. Harm me? How? Before Madeline could answer, a sharp rap came at the study door. The solicitor's assistant poked her head in. Madeline, the press is outside, cameras, reporters. They know he's dead, and they're looking for family comments. Amelia felt a cold wave of fear. She'd fled the limelight years ago, leaving behind a budding career as a photojournalist after a scandal she still couldn't fully recall. That scandal had fractured her relationship with Lucas and ultimately driven her from home. Now the world had come knocking again. I'll handle it, Amelia said, steadying her voice. She closed the box, clutching it like a lifeline. Madeline nodded, retreating. Alone once more, Amelia pressed her forehead against the cool wood of the desk. The storm outside grew louder. Rain pounded against the leaded glass, rattling the frame. Internally, Amelia waged her own tempest. Betrayal, confusion, a rekindling of guilt over abandoning Lucas without explanation. She'd arrived here looking for solace, and was instead met with cryptic clues and unspoken dangers. A sudden resolve settled over her. She pushed away from the desk, lifting the photograph box with determination. The musty air of the study felt charged, like the calm before a storm. If her father had left this fragment of a secret, she owed it to herself to unravel it. Footsteps approached down the corridor. Amelia peeked through the study's window. Reporters and cameras pressed against the front door. Media flashes flickered through the rain. She closed her eyes, letting the thunder mask her racing heartbeat. In that moment, Amelia chose action over fear. She would confront the past head-on, face Lucas, track down this mysterious Nathaniel, and demand the truth. The storm outside mirrored her resolve. No longer would she hide. No longer would she let shadows define her story. Clutching the photograph to her chest, Amelia stepped out of the study into the hall's sharp light. Each footfall echoed the unspoken promise, to uncover what lay beyond the frame, and to reclaim the life she'd been too afraid to live. The next morning, Amelia woke to the muted patter of rain against the tall bedroom windows. The master suite, once her parents' sanctuary, now felt cavernous and hollow. She dressed in her father's dark wool coat, stepping into it as though it could give her the armor she needed. In her pocket lay the photograph of her and Lucas, with Nathaniel lurking in the background, a silent accusation that burned hotter than guilt. Down in the kitchen, the staff, longtime family housekeeper Mrs. Dunmore and her son, Peter, prepared tea and toast without looking up. Mrs. Dunmore's eyes were kind but wary. She'd watched Amelia grow from a bright-eyed girl into a woman fractured by scandal. Peter, in his late 20s and recently returned from college, avoided Amelia's gaze altogether. Miss Amelia, Mrs. Dunmore said softly, setting a cup of Earl Grey before her. You should eat something. Amelia nodded. Thank you. As she sipped, her thoughts raced. She needed answers about Nathaniel, about the hidden box, and most of all about Lucas. She wondered if he'd even heard of her father's passing yet. She rose abruptly. I'm going into town, she announced, though she wasn't sure where town would yield what she sought. Mrs. Dunmore covered her mouth, stifling a gasp. You mustn't go out, Peter said, standing as if to block her path. His voice trembled. The reporters will swarm you. I'll use a taxi, Amelia cut in, her voice firmer than she felt. She shouldn't have to explain her business to Peter. But Mrs. Dunmore stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Peter's shoulder. Let her be, she murmured. She needs to see things for herself. Peter's shoulders slumped, and he stepped aside with an apologetic nod. Amelia slipped out through the servants' entrance, toolbox of secrets in hand, and flagged a taxi. She gave the driver the address of the local archives, a dusty municipal building where the town's official records were kept. On the way, she stared at the photograph in her hand, trying to squint past the smiling couple and focus on Nathaniel's stern profile. She imagined confronting him, demanding to know what role he'd played in the day she thought had been perfect. At the archives, the librarian, an older man named Mr. Cunningham, recognized her at once. He was polite, but his eyes held unspoken condolences. Amelia cleared her throat. I'm looking for records on a Nathaniel Whitaker, she began. He would have been born around 1980. I think he died young. Mr. Cunningham's brows knitted. Whitaker is a prominent name in our area, he said. But I don't recall. Try me, Amelia pressed, sliding the photograph across the counter. His eyes flicked to it, his lips tightened. Where did you get this? He slid on his glasses, studied it. I found it in my father's study, she said evenly. He referred to him as Nathaniel. That's all I know, Mr. Cunningham thumbed through a ledger. Nathaniel Whitaker, born April 12, 1981. Died June 3, 1999. Cause, motorcycle accident in Charleston, South Carolina. But he's listed as your father's brother, your uncle. He looked up, eyebrows raised. Are you aware of another Whitaker sibling? Amelia's heart lurched. She had never known her father had a brother. Why hadn't that been shared? No, she whispered. I need everything you have. He retrieved a collection of documents, birth certificate, accident report, even a faded newspaper clipping headlined, Tragic Death of Local Man Overseas. The article spoke of Nathaniel's restless spirit, a promising student who left home at 18, traveled the world, and returned for a brief visit before the accident. Amelia's pulse hammered. So Nathaniel had been real and her father had hidden him. But why? And how had he landed in that photograph, standing behind Lucas and her on the pier? Anything else? She asked. Mr. Cunningham hesitated. There's a letter unsigned, sent to your parents shortly after the accident. It says only, I will come home when I'm needed. You'd have to request permission to view it. Amelia took a deep breath. I'll take it. 30 minutes later, she sat in a small reading room, reading the anonymous letter by the yellowed light of a desk lamp. To those who think they know me, I left to find my place in the world. I did nothing wrong. When the time is right, I will return. And her breath caught. The letter writer claimed to be Nathaniel, signed only with an initial. It implied something unsaid, a promise to return, and a denial of wrongdoing. Amelia's mind raced with possibilities. Did Nathaniel cause the scandal she'd fled? Was he part of the reason she and Lucas broke up? Or had Lucas mistaken him as a threat? Clutching the documents, Amelia left the archives in a daze. The rain had nearly stopped, but the clouds still hung heavy. She flagged another taxi, this time directing it to Lucas's address, the apartment building downtown where she had once lived with him before her abrupt departure. Lucas's complex was a modern high-rise. Amelia's heart pounded as she approached the front desk of the lobby. The concierge recognized her from old photos. He frowned. Miss Whitaker, he said with surprise. I wasn't aware you'd returned. I need to see Lucas, she said, urgency in her voice. It's important, he hesitated. He's not allowed visitors since the lawsuit, but I'll tell him you're here. Sue who? The concierge's face tightened. Your father's estate. Lucas filed a claim against him, something about intellectual property rights over those vacation photographs. He nodded toward the elevator. He's on the 5th floor, apartment 512. Amelia's blood ran cold. A lawsuit, vacation photographs. Her photography career had revolved around a collection of sun-drenched travel images. They'd been her first big break. She'd thought her father supported her. Had he stolen her work? And was Nathaniel implicated? The elevator chimed on the 5th floor. Amelia stepped out, her arms trembling. She found 512 and knocked lightly. After a moment, the door cracked open. Lucas stood there, taller than she remembered, his sandy hair streaked with gray, his blue eyes haunted. Amelia, he breathed, surprise warbling his tone. I didn't think you'd come back. She swallowed hard. Lucas, I need answers. He stepped aside wordlessly. The apartment was modest. A cream sofa, bookshelves lined with photography tomes, a coffee table scattered with legal briefs. Lucas motioned her in, his shoulders tight. I got your letter, he said, voice low. The one telling me not to contact you. She closed the door. I wrote any letter. I've been following leads on Nathaniel, my uncle, apparently. I found documents at the archives, and you sued my father over photos I thought were mine. She held up her stack of papers. Lucas's face crumpled with regret. I'm sorry. I didn't know your father was your father. Excuse me, your family member. I thought I'd been ripped off by a stranger. The photos I licensed turned out to be nearly identical to ones you'd shot, but I couldn't find you, so I sued. He ran a hand over his face. I thought you abandoned me. Amelia's chest tightened. I never meant to abandon you. Things got complicated, scandal, my father's illness. I needed space. He shook his head. Space, I tried calling you. Emails bounced. You vanished, Amelia, I felt. She cut him off gently. I'm sorry. She paused, voice raw. But I need your help. You were there that day on the pier, you remember. After the exhibit when I met you. He nodded slowly. Picnic by the water. We watched the sunset. He frowned. But I remember someone behind us, Nathaniel Whitaker. He stepped into the frame, asked if I would take the photo. He looked uneasy. Amelia's heart thundered. He asked you, why? Lucas's eyes darkened. He said something about letting the past stay buried. Then he left without a word. Amelia closed her eyes. So Nathaniel had orchestrated his own cameo in their first photo. Why? Then he disappeared, leaving her father to shoulder the secret. Now it made sense. Nathaniel had felt wronged, by what she still didn't know, but had inserted himself into the one moment that mattered to her as both witness and judge. I need to find out what he wanted buried, Amelia whispered. Lucas stood and crossed to the window. The city stretched beneath them, glimmering wet. I know someone who might help, he said. My lawyer, Isabel, she dealt with the lawsuit. If anything's hidden in legal files, trusts, contracts, promises, she'll find it. Amelia's pulse quickened. Let's go! Together, they hailed a car to Isabel's office, a sleek corner building with frosted glass doors. Isabel Hartman, sharp-suited and silver-haired, greeted them tersely. At her invitation, they sat in her conference room. I've reviewed everything, Isabel said without preamble. Your father established a secret trust years ago, under the name Nathaniel Whitaker Fund. It held assets in your uncle's name, stocks, real estate overseas. But the trust dissolved upon Nathaniel's death in 1999. The file here is merely a dissolution certificate. She tapped the papers. There is, however, a sealed document marked access only upon Amelia Whitaker's 35th birthday. That's you, reached last month. Your father arranged it. She slid an envelope across the table. Amelia's breath caught. She tore it open. Inside lay a typed letter on heavy stationery. My dearest Amelia, if you are reading this, you are now free to know the truth. Nathaniel was not merely my brother. He was the victim of a betrayal that could have destroyed our family name. He entrusted me with his life's work, but something went wrong. I reframed the narrative to protect you. The moment you and Lucas met, Nathaniel recognized a chance for redemption. To be part of your happiness, even if from the shadows. He asked Lucas to snap that photograph, to immortalize his hope that you would one day see him not as the villain you never knew, but as the brother who loved you. I kept this hidden to spare you the pain, but now you deserve to uncover every secret. With all my love, father tears blurred Amelia's vision. She held Lucas's hand, stunned by the revelation. Nathaniel's betrayal had been a tragic mix of idealism and misfortune. He had sought redemption, but died before he could explain. Her father had shielded her, believing ignorance was kindness. Lucas squeezed her fingers. He wanted you to see him, Lucas whispered. And your father did right or tried to. Amelia inhaled, steeling herself. We need to learn more about Nathaniel's life, what work he entrusted to my father, and why he felt the need to protect me by lying. She met Isabel's eyes. Can you help us locate his personal journals or correspondences? Isabel nodded. There's mention of a box of letters stored in a safe deposit vault in Charleston. We'll retrieve them. As they left Isabel's office, Amelia felt the weight of generational secrets lifting. The storm inside her heart had shifted from confusion to purpose. She and Lucas walked in silence to the nearest cafe, sharing warm coffee as midday drizzled on the sidewalks. I'm sorry I accused your father of theft, Lucas finally said. I should have come to you first. Amelia managed a small smile. I'm sorry I vanished, and I'm grateful you're here now. Outside, the clouds broke, revealing a pale sun. Warm light spilled across the pavement, illuminating raindrops like diamonds. Amelia lifted her face to the sky, feeling the tension in her chest recede. The journey ahead, Unearthing Nathaniel's letters, confronting the past, forging a new future would be arduous. But for the first time in years, Amelia felt ready. With Lucas by her side and the truth's fragile pieces before her, she would reconstruct the story that had been framed without her knowledge. And in doing so, reclaim not only her father's legacy but her own. A week later, Amelia and Lucas stood before the wrought iron gates of the Charleston Safe Deposit Company. The humid summer air pressed against them, thick with magnolia-scented breeze. In Amelia's hand was a court order granting them access to Box 316, her father's final safeguard for Nathaniel's correspondence. Inside the cool vault room, rows of steel cabinets gleamed under fluorescent lights. The attendant led them to a tall locker. With a pair of keys, Lucas unlocked the padlock. Inside lay a battered leather satchel, its edges scuffed from travel and time. Amelia unlatched the brass buckle, her pulse pounding as she lifted out a bundle of letters tied with red ribbon and a small leather-bound journal stamped N.W. With shaking fingers, Amelia untied the ribbon and opened the first letter. Dated August 17, 1998, it was addressed to their father. "Dear brother, I write from Bali, surrounded by beauty but filled with sorrow. My choices have hurt us all, I know that. But I have discovered truths about our family that cannot be unlearned. I trust you to guard my story until Amelia is old enough to understand. This sacrifice is mine to bear." Her breath caught. She turned to Lucas, who laid a steadying hand on her shoulder. Next, she opened the leather journal. Its yellowed pages held Nathaniel's spidery script. "I never wanted to hurt Amelia. When I uncovered father's affair, my mother's despair, I lost my way. I ran to prove I was more than the keeper of shame. Yet in every port I saw reflections of our pain. I came home to set things right, to give Amelia a life untainted by regret. But fate rode with me that night on Route 17. A single tear escaped her eye. Nathaniel's pain mirrored her own, but where she had fled, he had returned. Suddenly, Lucas's voice cut through the silence. "There's one more envelope, sealed with wax." He handed it to her. The seal bore a small botanical impression, an oak leaf, perfectly intact. Amelia cracked the wax and unfolded the note. "Amelia, if you read this, I am gone. In these pages and letters, you have my truth. Your father framed our first photo not to hide me, but to give me a place in your happiest moment. He believed I deserved that grace, even in death. Now I ask of you, forgive me, forgive us both. Live the life I could not." Nathaniel, her legs weakened. All this time, she'd blamed her father for secrets, Lucas for slander, and fate for tearing them apart. Yet Nathaniel's final plea was centered solely on her, his niece, the one he'd never held but had loved deeply. A sharp voice startled them. The vault attendant cleared her throat. "I'm sorry to intrude, but business hours are over." Amelia gathered the letters and journal, pressing them gently to her chest. Outside, dusk had fallen, lanterns glowing amber along the drive. She and Lucas crammed into the back seat of a waiting car, the city lights blurring past. As the car sped toward the Whitaker estate, Amelia felt an urgency unlike anything she'd known. She needed to lay Nathaniel's words before her father's portrait in the study, to reconcile the man she'd loved and lost. When they arrived, the house was bathed in the soft glow of lamps. Inside, the mournful hush welcomed her. She climbed the stairs to the study, the photograph of her and Lucas on the mantel catching her eye once more. She placed Nathaniel's journal beside the framed snapshot, the red ribbon trailing across the desk. Lucas stood behind her. "What will you say to him?" he asked softly. Amelia closed her eyes and breathed deeply. "I'll tell him I forgive him, that I understand why he did it, and I'll thank him for loving me, even when I didn't know I needed it." She lifted her hand and gently touched the photograph's edge, as though brushing Nathaniel's presence. Then she spoke aloud into the silence. "Father, Nathaniel, wherever you both are, thank you. I see now that love isn't always tidy or spoken. Sometimes it's hidden in shadows, framed by grief, but always there." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she traced the oak leaf seal imprinted on Nathaniel's letter. The weight of decades of secrets felt lighter, released into the open air of the study. Lucas moved forward, wrapping her in his arms. "You're not alone," he murmured. Amelia nodded, pressing her cheek against his chest. In that moment, she felt the full circle of her journey, from isolation and confusion to understanding and connection. The photograph on the mantel no longer symbolized a broken past, but a bridge between hearts, both living and gone. As the clock chimed midnight, Amelia whispered a final vow: to live openly, to treasure hidden truths, and to honor the love that had guided her through every storm, no matter how silently it whispered from the shadows. Amelia awoke the next morning to the familiar sound of birdsong drifting through the partially open window of her childhood bedroom. The portrait of her father on his desk, the one that had once felt so distant, now seemed almost gentle in its gaze. Sunlight filtered through the gauzy curtains, painting the room in soft gold. For the first time since her return, she felt at peace. Downstairs, Lucas was brewing coffee in the kitchen. The rich aroma of freshly ground beans filled the air, mingling with the scent of rain-damp earth that seeped in through the open door. "Morning," Lucas greeted, handing her a steaming mug. His eyes were tired but bright. "Thanks," Amelia replied, cradling the cup. She glanced around the kitchen, still immaculate, still echoing with caretaker footsteps. "What now?" Lucas leaned against the counter. "We need to decide what to do with Nathaniel's letters and journal. And there's the matter of the trust assets. Should they go toward something meaningful, perhaps a scholarship or memorial fund?" Amelia nodded slowly. "I want to honor Nathaniel's legacy. He traveled the world seeking purpose. He believed in art and discovery, right? His journal mentions photography, too," Lucas said. "He wrote about landscapes and people, the same passion you and I share." A spark ignited in Amelia's chest. "Let's create the Nathaniel Whitaker Fellowship, a grant for young photojournalists from underrepresented backgrounds. A way to send them out into the world, as he did, with a safety net we never had." Lucas smiled. "That feels right." As they finalized details, drafting application criteria, contacting legal counsel to reallocate the trust, Amelia felt her purpose crystallize. Each decision brought her closer to bridging past and future, honoring both her father's protective instincts and Nathaniel's adventurous spirit. By midday, they gathered with Mrs. Dunmore and Peter in the parlor. Amelia stood beside the mantel photograph, now flanked by Nathaniel's journal and letters tied with a satin ribbon. "Your father would have been proud," Mrs. Dunmore said softly, handing Amelia a small envelope. "He left this for you before he passed." Amelia's fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single Polaroid, Amelia as a toddler, perched on her father's knees, both beaming. On the back, in her father's handwriting, "My world starts and ends with you." Amelia's throat tightened. She rose and hugged Mrs. Dunmore, tears slipping freely. Peter looked on, eyes misty. Later, Amelia and Lucas convened with Isabel Hartman to finalize the fellowship's establishment. Isabel placed her eyeglasses on the table and nodded approvingly at the paperwork. "The Nathaniel Whitaker Fellowship is official," Isabel declared. "Applications open next week." Amelia let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Thank you for making this happen." Isabel rose. "Your father would have wanted it this way." As the documents were signed, Lucas squeezed Amelia's hand. "We make a good team," he said. She smiled. "We do." That afternoon, Amelia ventured into town alone, carrying the leather-bound journal. She stopped at the old photography studio where she'd first learned to develop film. The sign above the door read Whitaker and Sons, faded but still legible. Inside, rows of framed prints lined the walls. Her earliest works hung alongside Nathaniel's, black-and-white travel photos captioned in his neat script. Mr. Hayworth, the elderly owner, approached. "Amelia, I thought that was you." He studied the journal. "Your uncle's work incredible, finally seeing the light of day." Amelia ran her fingers over one print. A mist-shrouded mountain lake in Bhutan. "I want to curate an exhibition of Nathaniel's photographs, give viewers insight into his journey. Could you help?" His eyes twinkled. "It would be an honor." They arranged to display the collection in the gallery's spring show, with proceeds benefiting the new fellowship. Amelia left the studio buoyed by possibility. On the drive home, Lucas surprised her with a detour to the pier where she and Lucas and Nathaniel had first met. The wooden boards were weathered, but the railings still gleamed. Gentle waves lapped at the pilings below, and gulls wheeled overhead. Lucas handed Amelia a small, wrapped package. "For you!" Amelia unwrapped it to find a polished oak keepsake box engraved with an oak leaf, the same motif as Nathaniel's wax seal. "I had this custom made," Lucas said, "to store Nathaniel's letters, your father's keepsakes, anything you want to protect." Amelia ran her fingers over the carving, tears welling. "It's beautiful." He slipped an arm around her shoulders. "Just like you." They sat on the edge of the pier, legs swinging above the water. Amelia held the box close, taking in the scent of salt and cedar. She thought of her father's love, Nathaniel's sacrifice, Lucas's unwavering support, and Mrs. Dunmore's kindness, and felt a surge of gratitude. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold and rose, Amelia whispered, "We did it." Lucas leaned in, pressing her forehead to his. Together. That evening, back at the estate, Amelia placed the oak keepsake box on the mantel beside the framed photograph and journal. The room glowed in lamplight, warm, intimate, alive with memory. She traced the edges of the Polaroid of her as a child, her father's arms protective around her. Amelia stepped back and inhaled, exhaling the last of her doubts. The house, once haunted by secrets, now brimmed with possibilities. She would carry her father's love and Nathaniel's spirit into every frame she captured, and every life she touched through the fellowship. Before bed, Amelia drafted a letter to Lucas. "Thank you for standing by me, for understanding the past, and for helping me build a future I can be proud of. I love you." She signed it simply, Amelia, and sealed it with a kiss. Placing it beneath the Polaroid, she climbed the stairs into the night, her heart light. In the study, the photograph on the mantel caught the flicker of the lamp. Two lovers at sunset. Laughter, promise, and the faint, forgiving presence of a brother who'd framed his place in their story. Now, with every secret revealed and every bond reaffirmed, that photograph symbolized not just a moment, but a lifetime of love, redemption, and hope. Months later, the Whitaker estate buzzed with excitement as the inaugural Nathaniel Whitaker Fellowship Awards were announced. Young photojournalists from around the world gathered in the grand parlor, their vibrant stories unfolding in projected slides. Amelia stood beside Lucas, her heart swelling as she watched them celebrate their new opportunities. After the ceremony, Amelia slipped away to the study. The mantelpiece held its new constellation of memories. The first photo in its silver frame, Nathaniel's journal and letters in the oak keepsake box, and her father's Polaroid beneath a ribboned letter. She touched the glass gently. In the hush, she whispered, "We are home." She thought of Nathaniel's final words, his plea for forgiveness and his desire to be part of her life. She thought of her father's protective love, Lucas's steadfast support, and Mrs. Dunmore's unwavering kindness. The room felt luminous, as though their presence lingered. Amelia inhaled deeply, at peace with every fragment of her past. The photograph no longer marked a mystery, but the bridge that led her here. Smiling, she turned to join the fellows and Lucas, stepping forward into a future shaped by truth, love, and the legacy of two brothers who framed her world.